In a bustling downtown cafe, Max sat at a small table, sipping his coffee while nervously adjusting his worn-out jacket. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the fancy clothes of the people around him. He felt out of place. The laughter from the groups nearby echoed in his ears, but he focused on his notebook, scribbling ideas for his startup. Today was special. He had an interview with a powerful CEO, someone who could change everything for him. Just then, a group of 3 women walked in, their elegant dresses swaying with every step. They were stunning, vibrant, and completely confident. Max tried to ignore them, but he couldn't help but overhear their conversation. One of them snickered, pointing in his direction. "Those clothes," the others chuckled lightly. Max's heart sank. He pulled his jacket tighter, feeling the weight of their judgment. He knew he didn't look like them, but he hoped his ideas would shine through, that his mind would matter more than how he dressed. But with each passing moment, he felt smaller. As the ladies sat down at a table near him, Max caught bits of their conversation. They talked about their high-powered jobs, their designer bags, and their luxuries. It was hard not to compare. Could he ever belong in a world like theirs? Would he ever wear those clothes and feel the way they seemed to feel? He took a deep breath, shifting his focus back to the notebook. This was not the time to dwell on self-pity. He had to think about the presentation he perfected, the vision he wanted to share. Inspiration bubbled in him as he imagined what his startup could achieve: a platform to help small businesses thrive, to help the underdogs find their voice. Then, just as he was getting into the groove, a tall figure strode through the cafe door. It was Mark, the CEO he had been waiting for. Dressed in a sharp suit that seemed to command respect, he scanned the room, clearly looking for someone. Max's heart raced. When their eyes met, Mark's face broke into a warm smile. He asked, his voice deep and inviting. Max stood up quickly, trying to look confident, but even he knew he couldn't hide the fraying edges of his jacket. "Yeah, that's me," he replied, forcing a smile. Mark extended his hand and Max took it. The CEO's grip was strong and reassuring. For a moment, Max felt a surge of hope. Maybe this was his time. Mark gestured for Max to follow him outside. "Let's find a quieter place to chat," he said, leading him away from the clamor of the cafe. They walked a few blocks until they arrived at a stylish rooftop terrace overlooking the city. The stunning view took Max's breath away, but he felt the nervousness creeping back in. Mark motioned for Max to sit at a table with a breathtaking view. As they settled in, Max caught a glimpse of the cafe below. The laughter and chatter echoed up, and for a moment he wondered if those women were still talking about him. He quickly pushed that thought aside. "So tell me about your idea," Mark prompted, leaning forward with genuine interest. The way he listened made Max feel valued. He launched into his pitch, his passion spilling out with every word. Mark nodded, his eyes bright with curiosity. For the first time today, Max felt like he belonged somewhere. As he spoke, he could see the shift in Mark's expression. The CEO was captivated, nodding along, even throwing in questions that showed he truly cared. Max grew more confident, his fears slipping away like the fading sounds of the bustling cafe below. When he finished, Mark leaned back. "That's fantastic, Max. I think there's real potential in your idea." His tone shifted slightly, becoming more serious. Max felt the heat rising to his cheeks. He wasn't prepared for this. It's just something I've had for a while," he stammered, glancing down at it. Part of him wanted to hide it, to change the subject, but Mark held his gaze. "No, really, I want to know." Taking a deep breath, Max shared his background. He talked about growing up in a small town, about his passion for helping others, and how he had saved every penny to come to the city to start his own business. As the words flowed, he realized the jacket was a badge of honor, a symbol of his struggle and determination. "Wow," Mark said, "that's incredibly inspiring." He smiled. "And you know what? People will take notice of you, jacket or not. Style can only take you so far, but authenticity." Max nodded, feeling a surge of pride wash over him. Maybe the world of high-powered professionals wasn't as imposing as he thought. Mark was showing him that confidence meant more than simply wearing the right clothes. As they continued to talk, the conversation flowed like old friends catching up, and Max found himself laughing more than he thought he would. He felt lighter, more confident, but deep down there was still a nagging worry. What if the women from the cafe were right? What if he didn't belong? After a while, Mark looked at him seriously. "Max, I want to invite you to a networking event I'm hosting tomorrow. It could be the perfect opportunity for you to meet potential investors and other entrepreneurs." Max's eyes widened. Really? It felt like a turning point, a moment that could lead to something great, but the fear crept back in. "But what if?" "No what ifs allowed," Mark interrupted, smiling. "You have an important story and you need to share it." Max felt gratitude wash over him. This CEO was offering him a chance that could change his life, regardless of what he wore. As they wrapped up their conversation, Mark glanced at his watch. "I've got to head to a meeting now, but I'll text you the details for tomorrow. You'll find a way to shine, Max." Max stood, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. "Thank you so much. Believe in yourself," Mark said. And with that, he walked away, leaving Max staring out over the city, a newfound sense of hope filling him. The following day, as he prepared for the networking event, Max stood in front of his mirror, doubt creeping in again. He felt underdressed compared to the sleek suits he imagined everyone would wear. His jacket suddenly felt like a weight, reminding him of the cafe, the laughter, but then he remembered Mark's words. A deep breath steadied him as he headed out, embracing his own story. Arriving at the venue, Max was met with a sea of polished suits and designer dresses. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and ambition. He took a moment to gather his thoughts. This was not just an event, this was an opportunity he had waited for. As he walked in, he spotted Mark across the room, engaged in conversation. Max felt a surge of support just seeing him. He made his way through the crowd, introducing himself to others and sharing snippets of his idea. Each conversation built his confidence, erasing the doubts that tried to creep back in. Then he found himself speaking with a potential investor. The investor asked, sipping on a fancy drink. Max paused for a moment, but then he recalled Mark's encouragement. He shared not just his idea, but his journey, his struggles, and his passion. As he spoke, he noticed how engaged the investor became, leaning in to hear more. After speaking for a while, the investor smiled. "I see your passion and I want to learn more." Max's heart soared. As the night went on, he realized he was no longer just the nervous guy in a frumpy jacket. He was Max, an entrepreneur with a story to tell. People were responding not just to what he wore, but to who he was and what he represented. Later in the evening, just as Max was starting to feel truly comfortable in the space, he felt a tap on his shoulder. It was Mark, his eyes gleaming with pride. "I'm glad to see you here, Max. Thank you for believing in me," Max replied sincerely. Mark looked around and then leaned in closer. "Just remember, it's not about how you dress." Max nodded. He understood now. Success wasn't about fitting in, it was about being true to yourself. As the night faded, Max found himself surrounded by new connections, all made possible by a simple meeting with a CEO who saw beyond the surface. That frayed jacket he had worried so much about became a reminder of his journey, of every challenge he faced to get to this moment. Walking out into the night, the city lights twinkling above him, Max felt alive. He realized he wasn't just a dreamer anymore. He was becoming the author of his own story, and this was just the beginning. With each step he took, he carried the lessons he'd learned, ready to face whatever came next. Each encounter was a stepping stone, and he was ready to climb. Max stood in the crowd, the buzz of the city around him, his heart racing. With every passing moment, his mind replayed the earlier confrontation that had left him feeling small, vulnerable, and painfully aware of his frayed jacket. Just this morning he had been excited, the prospect of meeting a powerful CEO flickering hope in his chest. Now that hope felt like it was slipping away. It all started in a busy cafe, the kind filled with ambitious folks sipping lattes and plotting their next big move. Max had chosen the cafe for its reputation. It buzzed with creativity and success, or so he thought. He had carefully planned his meeting, choosing a corner table that allowed him to observe the vibrant energy swirling around him. But as he glanced down at his own clothes, the insistent whispers of self-doubt crept in. His jacket, once a bright yellow that had sparkled with optimism, was now faded and worn from too many nights out on the town. It had a history, just like him. But all it seemed to do was remind him that he didn't belong. Then, like thunder in a quiet room, laughter rang out from a group of 3 women at a nearby table. Their voices, dripping with mockery, cut through the cafe noise. "Look at that guy over there," one of them said, her tone laced with disdain. "What is he wearing?" Max felt his stomach drop. He didn't want to turn and face their ridicule. All he wanted was a chance to present his startup idea, to show the world he was more than his clothes. Yet the laughter had felt so loud, so unforgiving. Taking a deep breath, Max refocused. He grabbed his notebook and began to write, striving to drown out the insecurity creeping into his mind. He reminded himself of his dream, to create a tech platform that would give small businesses a fighting chance against big corporations. It was ambitious, but deep down he felt it was possible. He had to believe that. Just then the door swung open and in strode Mark, the CEO he was supposed to meet, looking every bit the part in a dapper suit that radiated power. The moment their eyes finally met, a spark lit up in Max's chest. Maybe this was the moment that would change everything. Mark called, his voice booming over the cafe's chatter. Max shot up from his chair, his heart racing again. This was the moment he had been preparing for. He extended his hand, ready to make a good impression, but all he could think about was how his jacket hung there, tattered and unassuming. Mark said, shaking his hand firmly. The warm smile on the CEO's face eased some of Max's nerves. He asked, genuinely interested. "Yeah, just moved here a few months ago," Max replied, his voice steadier than he felt. They stepped outside into the bustling streets, Mark's presence practically commanding the space around him. The sun bathed them in warm light, and for a moment Max let himself bask in the hope of new beginnings. "Let's talk about your idea," Mark suggested as they strolled down the street. Max could hardly contain his excitement. He launched into his pitch, fueled by passion and adrenaline. With every word he spoke, he could feel his spirit lift. The words flowed effortlessly. He spoke of helping local stores, of creating a connection that could reduce the relentless competitive pressure they faced. Mark listened intently, nodding as if he genuinely understood the vision behind Max's pitch. For a moment it felt as if the world had receded and vanished. It It was just the two of them, the ambitious entrepreneur and the powerful CEO. But then, just as Max began to feel confident, doubt squeezed into the back of his mind again. "Tell me about your jacket," Mark suddenly asked, his eyes narrowing with interest. Max's breath caught. It's just something I've had for a while," he stammered, glancing down at the faded fabric with embarrassment. Why had he assumed Mark wouldn't notice? Why this moment? Mark chuckled lightly. Max faced him, curiosity and vulnerability mixing in his gut. Swallowing hard, he opened up. "I grew up in a small town, struggled for years to save up for my dreams." His words tumbled out, each syllable heavy with meaning. Watching Mark, he could see understanding flourishing behind the CEO's bright eyes. The laughter from the cafe faded into the background. The group of women no longer controlled his thoughts or feelings. Instead, in that moment, the connection between them felt electrifying, filled with possibilities. "That's powerful, Max," Mark said, leaning in. "You're not just selling a product, you're selling the story." Slowly, the weight of inadequacy lifted from Max's shoulders. Maybe his jacket didn't need to represent failure. Perhaps it could symbolize resilience instead. Renewed confidence surged inside him, and he began to dive deeper into his vision, creativity flowing between them like a river. As they continued walking, the sun began to set, illuminating the streets in a warm golden hue. Every word exchanged lost the heaviness of judgment, replaced instead by respect. Etched into glass at the entrance, Mark asked, gesturing toward the elevator where sleek buttons promised access to a world brimming with opportunities. Max repeated, his heart racing anew. He hadn't expected to go further than the cafe. Was he truly worthy to join this world? But one look at Mark's assured expression silenced the doubts rattling in his mind. "Absolutely," Mark said with a confident smile. As the elevator hummed upward, Max felt the rush of the city beneath him. The soft glow of office lights flickered to life around them. They stepped onto a sleek, modern floor bustling with energy and innovation. People darted around, their determined expressions promising ambition and success. Max felt both terrified and thrill-struck. The space felt vast, alive. He had imagined this environment in his dreams, but the stark border between his imagination and reality was crumbling. Mark led him into a polished conference room. The shining walls held a panoramic view of the skyline. "This right here is where we make things happen," he explained, his tone rich with conviction. As they settled in, a wave of nerves washed over Max. He had to present his vision now, a task that felt monumental. But he recalled their earlier conversation and the way Mark had listened with respect. He took a deep breath and prepared to share. "Imagine a platform where small businesses can connect with customers, where they can tell their story and build a community," he began. He spoke with passion, envisioning a world where local shops could thrive, where personal stories mattered. As he continued, the tension in his chest began to dissolve, replaced by a fiery conviction. The moments stretched on, filled with questions and discussions of the details, and with each response, Mark's enthusiasm grew. While they talked, Max caught glimpses of other office workers peeking through the glass walls, their expressions curious and intrigued. And then something unexpected happened. One of those office workers, a woman who had been observing from the corner, stepped into their conversation. She wore an elegant suit that screamed power. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice confident, "but I couldn't help but overhear." A mix of apprehension and exhilaration washed over Max. Here stood someone influential, someone who had likely seen countless pitches, and she sought him out. Yes, that's me," he replied, trying to hold on to the confidence that had bloomed in him. "I love the concept. This city craves innovation, but rooted in community," she replied, nodding appreciatively. Max couldn't believe what he was hearing. Of course, the conversation flowed again, this time drawing in others from the office, their interest building around Max like gravity. As they debated the potential impacts of his ideas, he could feel the respect growing. He was not just the guy in the faded jacket anymore. They were listening to his dreams, and suddenly he could see pieces falling into place. After what felt like hours of brainstorming, laughter, and mutual respect, Mark glanced over at Max with a proud smile. Max felt a swell of gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me," he said earnestly. The truth was, it wasn't just the success of his idea now that mattered. It was the newfound belief in himself and the powerful connections forming around him. As they stepped back into the bustling office corridor, Max realized he could leave the cafe mockery behind. It was merely the starting point of his journey, a reminder that resilience could shine through even the most unexpected circumstances. In that moment, the city around him felt different. He wasn't just a dreamer. He was turning those dreams into reality, threads woven from his jacket, his story, and the spark of connection he'd forged with Mark. By the time he walked out of the building, a late-night glow reflected off the glass panes. He felt a newfound exhilaration. Perhaps there would always be critics, perhaps the world wouldn't always see him as he wanted, but he also understood that just as easily as mockery could appear, so too could opportunity. And as Max stepped onto the bustling streets, his head held high, he felt the weight of the past fading. With every step he took, he carried not just the memory of a frayed jacket, but the promise of a brighter future waiting for him just above. A future crafted through his own bold journey. Max stood nervously in the crowded cafe, clutching his cup of coffee like a lifeline. He had spent years dreaming about this moment, building up his startup idea from scratch. Just as he was finally gaining momentum, he felt the weight of his worn-out jacket closing in on him. It had been a thrifty find from a flea market, once vibrant but now tattered and faded. He was acutely aware that he didn't fit into this world of polished suits and glimmering devices where confidence radiated like the glow from the high-tech screens around him. As he scanned the room, his heart sank. The laughter coming from the table of stylish women nearby echoed through his mind. "Look at that guy's clothes," one of them had said, their voice dripping with mockery. The others had giggled, the sound slicing through him like a knife. Max wished he could disappear to blend into the shadows, but he forced himself to stay focused. Today he had a meeting with a powerful CEO, a woman who could turn his dreams into reality. He had rehearsed his pitch a million times, but now, standing there, anxiety twisted in his stomach. He fought against the self-doubt whispering that he didn't belong. Just then, the cafe door swung open, and in walked the CEO, Laura Carter. She was a forestall, confident, and dressed impeccably in a tailored suit. The moment her eyes met Max's, a rush of adrenaline surged through him. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. Laura called out, her voice loud and clear over the cafe chatter. He jumped up, his heart racing. He moved quickly toward her, feeling like a lion standing before a judge. She said, extending her hand. Max replied, shaking her hand firmly despite the tremor in his own. "Let's grab a table where we can talk," she suggested, her demeanor commanding. They settled at a corner table, and the atmosphere shifted as the coffee steam swirled around them. As they talked, the initial nerves began to fade away. Max dove into his pitch, laying out his vision for a platform that would connect local businesses with their communities. He spoke with enthusiasm, detailing how he believed stories and connections could drive sales and inspire loyalty in customers. The more he talked, the more he felt a spark of hope igniting inside him. Laura listened, her eyes focused, nodding along as he explained the potential impact of his idea. "It's refreshing to hear such passion," she said, breaking into a smile. But just as he began to feel a sense of belonging, Max heard it again. He heard one of them say, her words laced with ridicule. Suddenly, shame washed over him. He tried to shake it off, forcing himself to stay in the moment with Laura. "I want to change the game," he continued, rallying his thoughts. "Well, keep talking," Laura encouraged, her interest piqued. Max could see she was invested, that she saw the potential in his idea and perhaps in him too. As he spoke, he felt a flicker of confidence taking root. Max hesitated, glancing down at the faded fabric as memories flooded back. "It belonged to my father," he admitted, his voice lower. "He always wore it when he was working hard to build his own dreams." Laura's brow furrowed, genuine interest shining in her eyes. "That's beautiful." In that moment, he realized that his struggles were part of his narrative, a story worth telling. He spoke more, sharing his journey, his dreams, and the obstacles he had faced. The more vulnerable he became, the more Laura leaned in, genuinely absorbing his every word. Just as things were starting to click into place, the atmosphere shifted. Laura glanced at her watch, a shadow of urgency flickering across her face. "We should move this conversation upstairs," she said, her tone swift and serious. Max echoed, feeling both excited and terrified. Could he really face more influential people? But there was a glimmer of hope, a sense that he had broken through some barrier. "Absolutely," Laura insisted. She led him upstairs into a sleek, modern office space. The walls were lined with glass, and he could see bustling teams brainstorming, energy vibrant around him. As they entered a conference room, a wave of nerves crashed over him once more. Would they be as dismissive as the women from the cafe? But when he looked at Laura, her expression was reassuring. "Everyone, this is Max," Laura introduced him to the team. Max took a deep breath, feeling a rush of adrenaline. As he spoke again about his vision, something shifted. The professionals around him were attentive, nodding along and leaning in to catch every detail. He could feel the energy in the room change. He was no longer just the guy with the jacket. He was connected to something bigger. After what felt like an eternity of discussing ideas and strategies, Laura's partners began to share their own insights, building on Max's concepts. The dynamic was electric, filled with passion and possibility. Max felt himself growing, his confidence strengthening with every enthusiasm-driven conversation. Max hesitated for a moment, recalling the laughter from the cafe and how it had made him feel, but instead of shrinking, he held his head high. By telling real stories, by focusing on the heart of small businesses instead of just numbers. "People want authenticity," he replied, the conviction strong in his voice. Laura beamed at him, and suddenly the room felt warm with affirmation. What had once felt like a barrier was now simply a stepping stone, a point of connection deeper than he had ever imagined. When the meeting ended, Laura pulled him aside, her gaze sincere. "You are something special, Max." Over the next few days, Max couldn't shake the feeling of euphoria. He began to receive emails from the team he had met, interest swirling around potential collaboration. Yet with the excitement came questions. Could he really be ready for this? Would his past define him or inspire him? As he sat in his tiny apartment, he glanced at the jacket hanging on the back of his door. It had seen some hard days, but it also carried his dreams. Suddenly it hit him, this jacket was more than fabric. It was his motivation, his reminder that he had the courage to chase new opportunities and claim his worth. The morning of the follow-up meeting arrived. As he got dressed, he carefully chose an outfit that combined his trusty jacket with more updated styles. A final touch, a new hat, added a dash of flair and acknowledgement of his journey while embracing the present. Arriving at the office, the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Laura greeted him like he was an old friend, her enthusiasm igniting his own. She asked with an encouraging smile. He replied, feeling a newfound sense of authority. As they brainstormed with the team, Max's ideas continued to evolve, shaped by the rich conversations filled with investment in his vision. He absorbed their feedback like a sponge, and soon every piece felt like a building block to a brighter future. At one point, Laura leaned in, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "You have a talent for this, Max." The words took root in his mind and heart, blooming into tangible hope. By the end of the meeting, they had laid the groundwork for potential partnerships. As Max stepped out of that office, the world felt different, stronger, more vibrant, and undeniably open. Weeks turned into months, and little by little, the feedback turned into partnerships. With every small victory, Max became a staple in the community, and his platform began to take shape. The local stories he shared resonated with many, giving a voice to those who often felt unheard. One day, he found himself standing in front of a local chamber of commerce, sharing his vision and the impact it had made. There he stood, a man with a vision and a frayed jacket that had become a symbol of his resilience and spirit. The laughter and mockery from that cafe now felt distant, almost comical. In that moment, he understood that the journey was everything. He could shape his narrative, using each step, every hardship, and every laugh against him as fuel for his ambition. Max would never forget the day he stepped into that cafe, facing the laughter, and walked out with a vision and a new community by his side. The world pulled away from the shadows, illuminating a path that was distinctly his, stitched together by his choices and aspirations. Indeed he was, and he was just getting started. Max sat in the crowded cafe, clutching the handle of his tattered backpack like it was a shield. Around him, people radiated confidence, adorned in crisp suits and designer dresses. The air buzzed with animated conversations, laughter, and the distant hiss of the espresso machine. Max's heart raced, for today he would present his startup idea to Laura Carter, the CEO of a leading tech firm. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of the countless late nights he'd spent crafting his pitch. But just as his thoughts settled, a shrill laugh cut through the noise. "Look at that guy's jacket." Max's stomach twisted as he turned his head toward the commotion. A group of well-dressed women sat nearby, their laughter sharp and mocking. One of them, her blonde hair perfectly styled, pointed directly at him. He felt heat rush to his cheeks. Every self-doubt he'd ever harbored flared up like fire, swallowing his confidence whole. Another chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. Max wished he could curl up into a ball and disappear. He glanced down at his jacket, once a vivid blue but now faded and frayed. It told a story of struggle. His father had worn it through hard times, working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Max had held onto it as a reminder of the sacrifices made for his dreams, but in that moment it felt like a badge of shame. With a shaking hand, he picked up his coffee and tried to block out the laughter, focusing instead on the details of his presentation. He had poured his heart into this project, a platform to help small businesses connect with their audiences. It was innovative, it was necessary, and he believed in it deeply. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that his clothes would overshadow his ideas. The cafe door swung open, and in walked Laura Carter, the CEO he had been nervously anticipating. She owned the room with every step, her tailored suit poised yet approachable. Max's nerves cranked up another notch, mixing with awe. When their eyes met, he felt a weird blend of hope and trepidation. "Max," Laura's voice sliced through his anxiety, warm and inviting. "Yes," he replied, wiping his sweaty palms discreetly on his jeans. "Great to finally meet you. Let's find a quieter spot to talk," Laura said, leading him away from the relentless chatter of the cafe. They stepped outside, the sunlight hitting his face like a warm embrace, but as they walked, the laughter from the cafe echoed in his mind. "Just ignore them," he thought, trying to shake it off. Laura turned to him, her expression earnest. With a rush of adrenaline, Max began to pitch, pouring his passion into every word. As he spoke, he noticed Laura leaning in a little closer, listening intently. It felt liberating. He could see that she was genuinely interested, and for a moment he forgot all about his jacket and the judgment it had brought. But then Laura's gaze flickered to his jacket, a question in her eyes. "Can I ask about your style?" Max hesitated, the room around them fading. This was the question he dreaded, but somehow felt compelled to answer. "It belonged to my father," he said, a lump forming in his throat. "He wore it when he was struggling to make ends meet, working hard to support us." Laura's expression softened. "That's incredibly poignant," she replied. Maybe it wasn't just a frayed jacket, Max thought. Maybe it held a deeper meaning, one that could resonate with others. With renewed confidence, he continued, "My startup aims to help small businesses tell their stories just like mine." Their conversation flowed. Laura was captivated. She nodded and smiled, asking questions that pushed him to think deeper and more critically. With each exchange, Max felt his tension dissolve. This was not just another meeting, this felt like a partnership blooming. Just as he started to believe he was making real progress, a sharp voice cut through their conversation. It was one of the women from the cafe, making her way down the street, impeccably dressed and surrounded by her friends. Spotting Max, she laughed, her voice like ice. "Oh look, he's actually talking to someone important." The laughter bubbled up again and Max's stomach dropped. He felt exposed, an unwelcome spotlight on him. But he glanced at Laura, who stood unmoved, her gaze fierce. "Excuse me," Laura said, her voice steady. Max's heart raced. He had never expected Laura to defend him like that. The mockery seemed to fade, and for the first time he felt a flicker of pride in who he was. "Let's head upstairs to my office," Laura said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Max repeated, surprised. "Absolutely," she said, her determination infectious. They walked to the sleek building nearby, the cool glass doors making him feel as if he were stepping into another world. As they rode the elevator to the top floor, Max could feel the energy shifting. Laura turned to him, a bright smile playing on her lips. "Don't let them get to you." The elevator dinged and they stepped out into a bright, open office filled with chatter and the soft click of keyboards. Max marveled at the space, the modern design radiating success. Once they entered Laura's office, she gestured for him to sit at a polished desk. "Now let's discuss your vision in more detail," she said, easing into her chair, her energy invigorating. Max dove back into his pitch, this time feeling more grounded. As he explained how his platform would empower small businesses, he noticed people passing by, glancing in with curiosity. The laughter from the cafe felt like a distant memory. Laura leaned in, fully engaged. "I love how you're focusing on storytelling," she said. "In an age of algorithms and numbers, it's crucial to remember the human connection." Max paused, drawing on the energy of the room. "By staying authentic," he replied with conviction. "Instead of just pushing products, we'll help businesses share their values, their journeys. People crave sincerity." Laura nodded, her approval apparent. "That's exactly what this industry needs." As the meeting progressed, everything started to click. They brainstormed ideas together, Max feeling more empowered, more alive than he had in the cafe. Each new suggestion ignited a spark of excitement, and he felt as though he were finally crafting something real. After what felt like an eternity of brainstorming, Laura leaned back in her chair. "I want to invite you to collaborate with us." Max's heart soared. This was what he had come for, the opportunity for a partnership that felt almost surreal. "I'd love to, thank you for believing in my idea," he exclaimed, the words spilling out. As they wrapped things up, Laura leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "Remember, Max, it's not the clothes you wear, it's the heart you put into your work that truly matters." With each word, her confidence poured over him, instilling him with an eagerness to face whatever came next. He left her office feeling like he could conquer the world. Days turned into weeks, and Max found himself at the center of meetings, discussions, and brainstorming sessions. For the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged. Each idea pushed him to grow, to expand, and to elevate those small businesses he had dreamed of supporting. He became a voice in the community, driven by passion and purpose. His platform took shape, thriving off the stories he gathered from hardworking entrepreneurs who, like him, were trying to carve out their space in a relentless world. At a community networking event one night, standing proudly in front of a crowd, he delivered a heartfelt speech. "We're here to elevate each other," he proclaimed. The applause that followed echoed around the room, fueling his resolve. And then, as fate would have it, in the midst of his success, he got a call from Laura. "There's an opportunity to present at a national conference," she said, excitement buzzing in her voice. As Max prepared for the big day, he looked at the jacket hanging in his closet. It was still faded and frayed, but it no longer held shame. Instead, it symbolized his journey, the struggles, the fears, the triumphs. He pulled it on, feeling an old warmth wash over him. At the conference, standing on stage, he scanned the crowd. People from all walks of life sat before him, eager to hear his story. In that moment, he embraced who he was, jacket and all. Before he spoke, he took a moment to breathe, savoring the rush. "Hello everyone, my name is Max, and I used to feel like I didn't belong," he began. "But what I've learned is that our stories are what connect us." He shared his experiences, the laughter, the setbacks, the triumphs. With every word, he could feel the energy shift in the room as the audience connected with his truth. He delivered his vision with clarity and passion, elaborating on how the platform would help voices like theirs rise above the noise. When he finished, applause erupted. People stood cheering, clapping, and for the first time he felt truly seen. Afterward, as he stepped down from the stage, a sense of accomplishment surged within him. He spotted Laura in the crowd, her face beaming with pride. He walked toward her, exhilarated. "You did this, Max. You earned every bit of it," she replied with warmth. The crescendo of voices surrounded them as people flocked to ask questions and express their excitement about his platform. Max smiled, knowing he was no longer just the guy in the frayed jacket. He was a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of believing in oneself when all else seemed bleak. That night under a starlit sky, Max reflected on how far he had come. The mocking laughter from that cafe felt like a distant memory, a reminder of the hurdles he had overcome. His journey had shaped him, strengthened him, and brought him to this moment. And in that silence, wrapped in the warmth of his journey and the connections he had forged, he finally understood. It wasn't about the jacket he wore or the judgments of others. It was about the heart and determination he poured into every endeavor. Those things truly defined who he was. As he walked forward, he felt empowered, ready to embrace whatever came next. With each step, he carried the spark of dreams fulfilled, the power of stories shared, and the knowledge that he could rise above anything thrown his way. After all, this was just the beginning. The rain poured relentlessly, clouds looming like dark thoughts over the city. Max hurried down the sidewalk, his heart pounding and his old jacket clinging to him like a second skin. It was his father's, a faded blue that had seen better days, but it was the only thing he had that felt like a reminder of home. Yet today it felt more like an anchor holding him back. He arrived at the sleek skyscraper, its glass reflecting the overcast sky. This was it, the day he would pitch his startup to Laura Carter, the CEO of a prominent tech firm. He had spent countless nights fine-tuning his pitch, but standing here, drenched in doubt, he felt the weight of all the reasons he shouldn't be here. His clothes, his background, his insecurities. As he walked through the bustling lobby, he could hear snippets of conversations from polished professionals discussing investments and partnerships, laughter mingling with the clattering of keyboards. He took a deep breath before approaching the receptionist. "I'm here to see Laura Carter," he said, trying to steady the tremor in his voice. "Third floor, conference room B," the receptionist replied, barely glancing up. Max nodded and made his way to the elevator, the cool metal doors closing him off from the world. The elevator glided upward, but his thoughts spiraled. What if he embarrassed himself? What if Laura saw him as just another wannabe? The doubts wrapped tightly around him, but he knew he had to push through. He was here for a reason. As he stepped out onto the third floor, he felt his stomach flip. The conference room door was slightly ajar, and he could hear voices inside. He approached slowly, his heart drumming a nervous rhythm. Peeking through the crack, he caught a glimpse of Laura, radiant and in control, navigating a conversation with her team. Then he heard its sharp laughter. A woman in a sleek black dress, her hair perfectly styled, leaned in toward Laura. "Did you see that guy who walked in?" The one in that hideously outdated jacket. Max's stomach turned. He wanted to retreat, to disappear into the shadows, but something stopped him. He recalled the countless hours spent refining his vision, a platform to empower small businesses to tell their stories and connect with their communities. It mattered. Taking a deep breath, he pushed through the door. "Hi, I'm Max," he announced, trying to infuse confidence into his voice despite the tremor. Laura turned, her expression brightening. "Max. Great to see you." She gestured for him to join them, her warm smile offering some comfort. The laughter faded as Laura introduced him. "This is Max, the entrepreneur I told you about." The same woman who had mocked him earlier, now sporting a polite smile, nodded in his direction. She asked, feigning interest. Max stood taller. "I believe that small businesses have powerful stories to tell." As he spoke, he saw some skepticism in the woman's eyes, but Laura leaned in, her face lit with curiosity. "Tell us more," she encouraged. With each word, Max felt the initial nervousness begin to melt away, replaced by passion. He described the features of his platform, how it would empower local shops to share their narratives, to foster a sense of belonging. But just as the energy in the room shifted, the woman interrupted. Her tone dripped with condescension. Max felt his heart race, unsure of how to respond. He took a moment, grounding himself, because stories matter. In a world driven by data, people crave authenticity. They want to connect with businesses that understand them, he replied, confidence rising with each breath. Laura watched him closely, nodding thoughtfully. "That's an interesting perspective, Max." Max noticed that the woman's expression changed slightly. Maybe she wasn't so dismissive after all. He continued passionately, detailing how his platform would allow businesses to engage directly with their audience, share their journeys, and create loyalty. As the meeting progressed, the atmosphere shifted into something collaborative. Laura was impressed, but the woman still had that critical sparkle in her eye. Yet for Max, the momentum had shifted. He was speaking his truth, standing firm in his vision, and it felt liberating. After a deep dive into strategy and market analysis, Laura leaned back in her chair. "I believe you have something worthwhile here, Max." Max's heart raced. "Really? But let's head upstairs for a more private conversation," Laura suggested, standing up. The other woman raised her eyebrows, but Laura ignored her. Max asked, a flash of disbelief sweeping over him. "Absolutely. I want us to prepare a plan moving forward," Laura replied, her tone confident. As they entered the elevator, Max could feel a surge of excitement mingled with anxiety. What would the higher-ups think? Would they be more like the woman who mocked him, or more like Laura, who believed in his vision? When they reached the upper floor, the pristine hallway opened into a vibrant workspace buzzing with energy. Max could see teams collaborating and engaging in spirited discussions, the sound of success filling the air. It felt invigorating and intimidating all at once. "Welcome to the heart of it all," Laura said, gesturing at the space. They walked to a sleek conference room, and as they settled in, Max saw the confidence radiate from Laura. "Now, let's break down your vision and make it a tangible plan." As Max dove back into his pitch, away from the distractions of judgment, he felt invigorated. He described his platform, how it aimed to empower small businesses and foster genuine connections. He noted how community-driven initiatives felt more essential than ever, especially in a world so cluttered with impersonal transactions. Laura seemed captivated, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. She asked, Max didn't hesitate. "By collecting stories, each business has a unique journey that can attract customers. If we harness that authenticity, we can build a loyal customer base." He could see Laura nodding, engaged in every word. It felt surreal. This was the moment he had dreamed about, a chance to turn his idea into something real. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted them. It was the same woman from earlier. Max's pulse quickened. Part of him wanted to dismiss her, but then he recalled Laura's support, the courage it had given him to stand firm. "Of course," he said, holding her gaze. The woman's expression softened as if she was intrigued despite herself. "Interesting concept." Max smiled. "I believe they will. People want to feel connected to what they are buying." In that moment, the atmosphere shifted. The woman leaned in, genuinely interested now. Max elaborated, expressing excitement about how the platform would encourage businesses to share their development journeys, celebrate milestones, and bring their communities along for the ride. Laura, visibly pleased, chimed in. "This vision could be transformative for our approach." As they moved forward into collaborative discussions, the energy in the room felt charged. Max felt invigorated, embraced by a swell of excitement and possibility. It was exhilarating to have a team rallying around his vision, turning dreams into tangible plans of action. The discussion flowed seamlessly, intertwining ideas and concepts until it finally came to a close. Laura smiled widely. "I'm thrilled about this collaboration, Max." Max beamed, filled with appreciation. Realizing they had spent hours brainstorming, Max felt gratitude wash over him. When the meeting ended and he stepped back into the bustling workspace, he took a moment to soak it all in. People passed by, even giving him nods of encouragement. It was overwhelming yet liberating, knowing that he was no longer just the guy in the frayed jacket. He had become part of something larger, a community fueled by purpose. Weeks turned into months, and the initial plan evolved into a vibrant reality. Max worked tirelessly alongside Laura and her team, pushing through challenges and celebrating victories. He discovered a passion for collaboration, for the collective energy of dreaming big and creating meaningful change. At an event debuting the new platform, standing in front of a crowd filled with local business owners eager to embrace their stories, Max felt a wave of fulfillment. As he looked out at the faces filled with hope and excitement, he could feel the energy bubbling up inside him. "Welcome everyone. Today isn't just about launching a platform. It's about empowering you, the heart of our community," he began, his voice steady and loud. "We believe in your stories, your dreams, and your drive." The crowd erupted in applause, and Max felt the rush of connection. He had carved out his own space, a place set apart from judgment where dreams could take root. Among the audience, Laura stood proudly, her expression one of unwavering belief. In that moment, all the fears and doubts melted away. This wasn't just a project, it was a movement. From the cafe to the conference room, and now to the stage, his journey had transformed into a powerful story of resilience. The frayed jacket was no longer a measure of inadequacy. It represented his origins, his grit, and the unbreakable spirit that had brought him here. As the event concluded, people flocked to him, eager to share their excitement and stories. Each encounter felt like a thread weaving through the fabric of a growing community born from authenticity. With every interaction, Max felt a growing sense of purpose. He had discovered that true power lies in vulnerability, in sharing one's journey, and as he continued on this path, he couldn't help but feel empowered. He had found his identity, not just as an entrepreneur, but as a storyteller ready to lift others up and inspire them to reach for their dreams, no matter the judgments cast by others. Under the bright lights and supportive energy of that room, Max reflected on everything he had overcome. He had transformed the mockery of others into a soundtrack of celebration, turning doubts into dreams fulfilled. And in that moment, he knew that this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey. Max stood at the edge of the crowded cafe, his heart racing like the steam rising from the mugs around him. Outside, the skies were clear, but inside, the atmosphere was thick with ambition and expectation. Today was a big day. He was set to pitch his startup idea to Laura Carter, the CEO of a tech firm that had turned startups into success stories. Yet, as he took a deep breath and glanced at his reflection in the window, he felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. His jacket felt heavy on his shoulders. It was an old hand-me-down from his father, faded and frayed at the edges, far from the sharp suits worn by the professionals surrounding him. He imagined them whispering, It felt as if the very fabric of his being was on trial. Just then, a group of stylish women walked in, their laughter echoing in his ears. One of them, impeccably dressed in a designer dress and heels that clicked loudly against the floor, turned her head and spotted him. She exclaimed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Max felt his throat go dry. The laughter from the group intensified, and he became acutely aware of his jacket. He wanted to disappear, to shrink down to nothing. He had worked hard day and night to craft his business idea, but here he was, reduced to a punchline. In that moment, Max nearly turned around, but something inside him snapped. He clutched his notebook tighter, reminding himself of why he was there. His startup wasn't just a dream, it was a lifeline for small businesses struggling to survive in a competitive market. As the group settled down, Max took a deep breath and stepped forward. He didn't come here to let mockery erase his ambition. "Excuse me," he said, heart pounding as he faced the women. "I'm actually on my way to present to Laura Carter." The surprise on the woman's face was palpable. For a moment, the laughter hushed, replaced by an awkward silence. Max felt a rush of adrenaline course through him. Maybe that had been a bold move, or maybe it had been foolish. But before he could dwell on it, the cafe door swung open and Laura walked in. She was a force of nature, confident, well-dressed, and exuding charisma. Her eyes scanned the room until they met Max's. A glimmer of recognition lit her face. "Max, there you are." Her voice rang out above the cafe chatter, drawing immediate attention. Before he knew it, Laura approached, her presence demanding attention. The other women turned their heads, surprised to see the CEO walking toward him. She said warmly, leading the way outside. As they walked, the cool breeze brushed against Max's skin. He felt his confidence flickering back to life, even as the group of women whispered behind him. But Laura's energy poured over him like sunlight, and for the first time that day, he began to forget about their judgment. "Tell me about your idea," Laura prompted, her eyes bright with curiosity. Max shared his vision, a platform to empower small businesses to connect with their communities. As he spoke, he felt the clouds of doubt begin to part. Laura listened intently, nodding, her smile encouraging him to dig deeper. "People want authenticity. They want to support local businesses and hear their stories," Max explained, gesturing passionately. Laura leaned in closer, captivated. "That's a powerful concept. I think you're onto something," she said genuinely. But suddenly the laughter from the cafe echoed again in his head, and he became acutely aware of what he wore. Laura asked, her expression curious yet inviting. Max hesitated, the warmth fading slightly. "It belonged to my father," he admitted, his voice dropping. "He wore it when he was working hard to support our family." A flicker of understanding sparked in Laura's eyes, and for a moment the world around them disappeared, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of honesty. "That's beautiful," Laura replied, a soft smile playing on her lips. "You're not just selling a platform, you're selling your story." The words wrapped around Max like a warm embrace. Maybe he could be proud of his jacket. It wasn't a symbol of failure, it was a badge of honor. As they continued walking, Max felt himself open up, sharing more about his life, the struggles he'd faced, and the resilience that had pushed him to chase his dreams. To his surprise, Laura shared her own journey too, her successes and failures, and how each has shaped her path. Their connection deepened, and by the time they reached the elevator, Max's nerves had faded into excitement. They stepped in, and as the doors closed, he felt an urge to keep sharing. "I want to uplift others," he said, his voice steadier now. Laura nodded, her gaze fixed on him. "I can see your passion, it's inspiring." Max blinked, processing what she had just said. He repeated, a sense of disbelief washing over him. "Of course, we need to flesh this out," she insisted. The elevator doors opened, and Max stepped into a sleek, modern office space buzzing with activity. He could hear the rapid-fire conversations and laughter of people collaborating on ideas. Max felt a mix of thrill and trepidation. This was what he had always imagined, a place filled with opportunities. As they entered a conference room, Laura gestured for him to take a seat at the table. The air buzzed with anticipation as several team members walked in. They exchanged friendly greetings, and Max could feel his heart race again. This was not just a meeting, this was a pivotal moment in his life. "Everyone, this is Max," Laura introduced him, her voice confident. All eyes turned to him, and Max fought against the urge to shrink back. Instead, he straightened up, allowing the passion for his project to fill the room. "I believe that small businesses are the heart of our communities," he began, feeling the energy flow through him. He spoke more passionately than he'd ever anticipated. With each word, he could see the interest in their eyes grow. People began to nod and lean in, absorbing everything he shared. They engaged with him, asking questions, brainstorming ideas. Just as Max began to feel the momentum rising, the same woman from the cafe slipped in again, her curiosity obvious. She asked. "Of course," Laura replied, gesturing warmly to a seat. As the woman settled down, Max felt the tension in the room shift. This wasn't just about one person, it was about a collective dream. Max continued speaking, detailing the mechanics of his platform, sharing the potential it had to help small businesses thrive rather than compete against big corporations. Surprised, the woman began to take notes, her skepticism slowly fading away. "You make an excellent point," she said, glancing up from her scribbles. Max felt a sense of accomplishment, surprised by her change in demeanor. He replied, feeling a surge of encouragement. When people understand the stories that drive a business, they build a connection. The discussions flowed seamlessly, punctuated by Max's ideas and the team's thoughtful questions, turning the meeting into something extraordinary. Laura encouraged collaboration, and Max thrived under the supportive atmosphere. As they wrapped up the meeting, Laura turned to him, her eyes filled with excitement. "I want to invite you to join our team, Max." Stunned, Max could hardly respond. "Really? You deserve it," Laura assured him. "You've put in the work and your vision is inspiring." Max felt a rush of gratitude wash over him. "Thank you." After the meeting, the lively office felt like a new home, buzzing with a sense of community. People greeted him warmly, discussing plans and moving forward as a team. Max couldn't help but smile. He was finally part of something bigger. Outside, the rain had stopped and the sun peeked through the clouds. As he stepped out of the building, he realized something profound. His father's jacket, once a source of shame, had become a symbol of strength and resilience. Months flew by and Max dove headfirst into the project. He worked tirelessly alongside his new colleagues, refining the platform, bringing small businesses into the light, and empowering them with the tools they needed to thrive. He found joy in every success story: entrepreneurs who had transformed their businesses, customers who had formed meaningful connections, and a community that rallied together, supported by shared stories. At the launch event for the platform, Max stood before a crowd of small business owners gathered to celebrate a new beginning. The energy in the room was electric. He exclaimed, his voice ringing out clear and confident. As the audience applauded, he felt alive. This was what he had worked for, what he had fought against the laughter and the judgment for. People were here for the heart of it all: the connections, the authenticity, the realness. Afterward, as he spoke with excited entrepreneurs, he found himself reflecting on how far he had come. The laughter from that cafe felt like a distant memory. Instead of shame, he felt pride. Later, when he spotted Laura across the room, he made his way over to her, gratitude visible in his eyes. "Thank you for believing in me," he said sincerely. Laura smiled warmly. "You deserve this, Max." As the night wound down, Max absorbed the atmosphere of triumph. Standing among people who shared his values and dreams felt far more powerful than the judgments of a few. And when he finally glanced at his reflection in the glass door of the cafe, he smiled. The frayed edges of his jacket represented a past full of struggles, but they also symbolized triumph, resilience, and authenticity. As he walked away from the building, his heart swelled with gratitude and ambition. He had turned a moment of mockery into a journey of self-discovery. This was just the beginning. The world was vast, filled with opportunities, and he was ready to embrace it all one story at a time. Max stood at the corner of Maple and First, his heart thumping louder than the busy traffic around him. He glanced at his reflection in a nearby store window, and the confident businessman staring back seemed unreal. But as he pulled his worn jacket tighter around his shoulders, he could feel the weight of his anxiety creeping back. It was a chilly morning, and today marked a pivotal moment in his career. A meeting with Laura Carter, the CEO of a thriving tech company known for transforming startups into powerhouses. He had poured everything he had into crafting his pitch, sacrificing late nights and endless days just to get here. But today, all he could think about was his appearance, how the frayed edges of his jacket contrasted sharply with the polished suits he imagined Laura and her team would be wearing. He took a deep breath, trying to shake off the nerves. "You got this," he muttered to himself, smoothing his hair back. But his confidence wavered as he turned and made his way toward the cafe where the meeting was set to take place. As he stepped inside, the warmth enveloped him, but the atmosphere was electric with ambition. Laughter filled the air, and the clinking of coffee cups created a symphony of success. He spotted a group of women at a nearby table, their perfectly styled hair and designer outfits a stark contrast to his worn jeans and jacket. One of the women laughed, pointing in his direction. Max's heart sank. The laughter that followed hit him like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, all those feelings of inadequacy surged back. He forced himself to the counter to order a coffee, but every word seemed to echo the doubts in his mind. "Yeah, just a regular guy trying to make it," he thought sarcastically, sensing the judgment of those around him. Fighting against the tide of negativity, Max grabbed his coffee, steeling himself as he approached the back of the cafe where Laura would arrive. He had rehearsed his presentation countless times and believed in his idea with all his heart. He just needed to get through the initial interactions without letting the judgment pull him under. Then the door swung open and in walked Laura Carter, radiating confidence and charisma. She moved with purpose, and the room shifted slightly, recognition sparking among the patrons. Max felt his pulse quicken, the reality of this moment sinking in. She called out, her voice cutting through the chatter. She spotted him and headed straight over, her smile warm and genuine. "Hi Laura, thanks for meeting me," he managed, his voice slightly shaky but rising to meet her enthusiasm. "Of course. I'm excited to hear about your project. Let's grab a table," Laura suggested, leading him toward a quieter corner. Max followed, trying to focus on the conversation instead of the lingering laughter from the ladies nearby. As they settled in, Laura pulled out a notepad ready to take notes. "So tell me about your startup," she prompted, her eyes alight with curiosity. Max took a deep breath, tapping into that well of passion he had nurtured. "I've created a platform designed to help small businesses share their stories and connect directly with their customers." His nerves began to melt away as he spoke. The words flowed easily, imbued with the hope of changing lives. He could see Laura nodding, her engagement pushing him to elaborate on the nuances of his idea. But then, a familiar voice pierced through his confidence like a dagger. The same woman from the cafe had approached her, perfectly tailored clothes and immaculate makeup somehow even more striking now. Max's heart dropped. He glanced at Laura, who was visibly unamused. Laura retorted sharply, turning back to Max. The woman's expression fell, surprise flickering across her face, but before she could reply, Laura refocused on Max. Max took the chance to regain his footing, leaning into his passion. "Yes, I think people want to support local businesses. When they see the story behind the brand, a real person just like them, it changes everything." Laura smiled, clearly impressed. As he spoke, he began to feel the weight of judgment lift. He was in his element, driven by a purpose that outshone their laughter. But before he could fully relax, the woman interrupted again. "That all sounds great, but how do you plan to compete against the big names?" Max's cheeks flushed with frustration, but he remembered why he was there. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Because it's not just about competition," he said, his voice growing firm. Laura leaned in closer, her interest piqued. "You're absolutely right." Max felt a swell of confidence, a feeling he had long craved. To have Laura's support, coupled with the appreciation of the others in the room, was the validation he sought. With each passing moment, he could feel himself evolving before their eyes. "Let's take this upstairs for a more in-depth discussion," Laura suggested, standing with purpose. Max echoed, a bit stunned but thrilled. "Yes, I want you to meet some of my partners." As they walked to the elevator, a mix of nerves and excitement coursed through Max. This was the moment that could change everything. Once they were in the main office, he felt the energy change yet again. The space was sleek, filled with various teams collaborating and bouncing ideas off one another. It was a world he had only dreamt of being part of, and now he stood in the middle of it, ready to share his dream. They stepped into a conference room with large windows framing the bustling city outside. Max set his papers down and took another deep breath, feeling invigorated. Laura introduced him to her team. "Everyone, this is Max." The table filled with curious faces, and Max couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement. "Thank you," he said, his voice steadying. As he discussed his vision, the room buzzed with engagement. They asked questions, brainstorming how the platform could work and how it might impact local communities. There was genuine interest in every new idea he presented, but in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the earlier mockery. Just as he was growing in confidence, the woman who had ridiculed him before slipped in again. "Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to hear more about what makes your platform different," she said, a newfound seriousness in her voice. Max met her gaze, feeling the energy shift. "It's about authenticity." With each passing moment, the atmosphere in the room evolved. The woman's demeanor had shifted noticeably, her tone less critical and more inquisitive. "That makes a lot of sense," she admitted. The discussion flowed seamlessly. Max felt invigorated as they began considering practical applications for his idea. Laura encouraged him every step of the way, nodding and smiling, her approval infectious. What had started as a day shrouded in self-doubt was now transforming into something exhilarating. The energy was electric, and Max could feel the thrill of possibility enveloping him. As they wrapped up the meeting, Laura turned to him, her enthusiasm unmistakable. "Max, I want you to join our team." Max's heart raced. "Really?" Laura grinned. "Absolutely." With a wave of gratitude washing over him, Max felt like he was soaring. "Thank you." After the meeting, the office buzzed with excitement. People offered their congratulations, and the spark of camaraderie filled the air. Max felt as if he'd found a new home, a place where his ideas were celebrated instead of mocked. As weeks turned into months, he immersed himself in the work, collaborating with talented individuals who shared his vision. They refined the platform, developing tools that would allow businesses to share their stories while building relationships with their customers. Max reveled in the small victories along the way. Each successful launch of a new story, each local business that found new life through their platform, filled him with pride. He often thought back to that fateful day in the cafe, how the laughter of those women had once made him feel so small. One evening, as he was preparing for an event to showcase the platform, he paused and looked at his reflection in the window. The frayed jacket was still there, a reminder of where he had come from, but it no longer held him back. Instead, it became a symbol of resilience. At the launch event, the energy in the room was electric. Max stood in front of a crowd of eager small business owners, ready to share how their platform could empower them. The atmosphere was filled with excitement, support, and a deep sense of community. "Welcome, everyone," he shouted, invigorated by the crowd's applause. The applause grew louder, and Max felt the warmth of support radiating from the audience. This was more than just a business pitch, it was a movement. As he stepped down from the stage, people rushed to him, eager to ask questions and express their excitement. And then, as the day unfolded, he spotted Laura across the room, beaming with pride. He approached her, filled with gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me, for seeing the potential in what I do," he said earnestly. "You had it within you all along, Max," she replied. Her words resonated with him as he connected with the community of business owners that had gathered to celebrate their wins. Each individual person, their ambitions, their passions, all collided to form a vibrant tapestry of stories just waiting to be shared. As he mingled among them, he began to feel something profound stirring within him. The mocking laughter he had once feared felt like a distant memory. He had triumphed over the judgments and emerged stronger on the other side. That day, under the bright lights of the venue and surrounded by people who understood the power of stories, Max realized that his journey wasn't just about launching a platform. It was about embracing who he truly was. He had transformed the laughter into a soundtrack of encouragement. Max understood that judgments and mockery weren't simply obstacles, they were stepping stones towards something greater. As he walked away from the event, the sun setting over the city, he felt invincible. He had carved out a space for himself, a world where authenticity reigned, where stories mattered, and where connection could change lives. And he knew deep down that this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one filled with endless possibilities, growth, and the authentic connections he had always dreamed of fostering. As he turned the corner, he glanced back at the venue, a smile creeping onto his face. This was his time, this was his world. Max stood at the corner of Maple Street, heart pounding in rhythm with the urban bustle around him. Just a stone's throw away, the glass doors of a well-known tech firm gleamed in the morning sun, mirroring his aspirations. Today was the day he was to pitch his innovative idea, a platform designed to connect small businesses with their communities. He had worked tirelessly, sacrificing sleep and social outings for this moment, but as he adjusted the frayed collar of his vintage jacket, discomfort settled in. It was an old hand-me-down from his father, faded from years of wear, and now seemed to mock him. The air thrummed with the sound of success-polished suits and designer shoes dominating the sidewalks. Then it struck him, perhaps he didn't belong here. Just then, a group of impeccably dressed women walked past, their laughter spilling into the street like glitter. One of them exclaimed, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "What is he doing here?" Heat crept up Max's cheeks as he felt their eyes on him, judgment clawing at his confidence. He turned, ready to flee, but he caught himself. "Today is different," he whispered to himself. Gathering his courage, he pushed open the cafe door, the smells of coffee rich and comforting. The cafe buzzed with energy. He approached the counter, ignoring the sharp giggles still echoing in his mind. His mind slipped into overdrive as he prepared to meet Laura Carter, the powerhouse CEO who had the potential to change everything for him. He ordered a coffee, his hands trembling slightly as he fished out his wallet. Clutching the cup, he turned to find a table in a quieter corner, trying to drown out the laughter that still hung in the air. As he scanned the room, his heart sank. The laughter from earlier felt louder and his confidence dwindled under the weight of judgment. But then, stepping through the door, he saw her. Laura Carter walked in like she owned the place, her tailored suit sharp enough to cut glass. Max could hardly breathe. She was everything he thought a leader would be. She surveyed the cafe, her confident stride cutting through the room until her sharp gaze landed on him. She called out, a smile breaking across her face. Relief and warmth flared in his chest. Max managed, trying to suppress the quiver of his voice. They settled at a small table, and Max felt the nervous energy grabbing at his insides again. Laura pulled out her notebook, bright eyes focusing on him. "Yes, I believe in the power of stories. My platform will help small businesses share their journeys and connect directly with their communities," Max explained, allowing that passion to bubble forth. But just as his words took flight, that same group of women approached, laughter echoing like a judgment call from the back of the room. The blonde woman declared, her voice dripping with derision. For a moment, Max froze, the laughter sticking to him like syrup. But as he glanced at Laura, a flicker of annoyance crossed her face. "Excuse me." "This is a business conversation," Laura shot back, her voice sharp and clear. The woman blinked, momentarily taken aback, but her smirk returned quickly. Max felt the warmth of anger rise within him but managed to keep his composure. He had practiced this countless times, he wouldn't let social snobbery derail him. "Actually, this jacket represents my journey. It belonged to my father who taught me the value of hard work and perseverance," he replied, earning a surprised look from Laura. The laughter from the nearby table startled but also invigorated him. The mood in the room shifted as Laura turned her full attention back to Max, the woman behind him left momentarily speechless. "I love that," Laura said, nodding appreciatively. "It's about the story, isn't it?" Max's heart beat steady. The doubt began to peel away, layer by layer. "Exactly, people want to buy from brands that resonate with their values, that feel like part of a community," he continued. Just then Laura's gaze sharpened. "Let's move this conversation upstairs," she suggested, standing up with an air of excitement. Max stammered, the surprise evident on his face. Absolutely, I want you to meet some of my partners. The elevator ride felt surreal. Every inch upward felt like a descent into a new world. Each chime of the elevator filled him with nervous anticipation, and the reflection of his faded jacket in the metal doors served as a reminder of how far he had come. When the doors opened, they stepped into a sleek office space buzzing with energy. Modern art adorned the walls, and the soft hum of collaboration filled the air. Max's heart raced. This was a different ballgame. "Welcome to our main hub," Laura said, motioning around. They entered a conference room with panoramic views of the city skyline. The team assembled quickly, each faced with a newfound curiosity. "Everyone, this is Max," Laura introduced him, her pride evident. Feeling suddenly exposed yet exhilarated, Max shared his vision in detail. The room filled with enthusiasm as he spoke, their eyes wide with interest. But as he constructed his narrative, the blonde woman joined them again, this time standing skeptically in the doorway. She challenged, crossing her arms. Max took a moment, surrounding himself with that buoyant energy that had enveloped him when he first began speaking. Not about competing with them, it's about creating connections. When people understand the stories behind their purchases, they will choose the brands that resonate with their hearts, not just their wallets, he replied confidently. Laura's face lit up with excitement. "That's exactly what I've been saying." The tension in the room shifted, with the skeptical audience moved by his conviction. Max continued, weaving intricate thoughts about community engagement with growing buzzwords that seemed to dance in the air. As they delved deeper into discussions, each new question felt like a victory. Laura encouraged their ideas, and Max soaked in every moment, riding a wave of momentum. The woman's initial ridicule began to fade, replaced by genuine interest as she started taking notes. While the discussions mirrored a productive brainstorming session, something within Max flickered, a small voice nudging him that he needed to seize this moment. "Let's create a pilot project," he suggested suddenly. "I want to show you how powerful storytelling can be." Laura nodded enthusiastically. "I love that idea." But just as Max felt the thrill of possibility surge through him, the woman who had teased him before stood up and addressed the room. "But what do you really know about running a business?" The words felt like cold water splashed across his warmth, dousing the fire that had ignited in him moments before. Self-doubt crept back, uninvited but familiar. Would they really take him seriously? Laura, reading the mood in the room, turned sharply. She interjected, her voice carrying authority. "Max has a vision and a passion that many seasoned entrepreneurs lack." Max felt an electric jolt of gratitude at Laura's defense, but that nagging self-doubt still clawed at him. The woman's words echoed in his mind. Before he could formulate a response, the discussion shifted back to strategy and timelines. They began outlining steps to move forward with the pilot project. As the ideas flowed and everyone engaged, Max felt the thrill slowly creep back, but it sat uneasily on his chest. As the meeting wrapped up, Max found himself still in a daze. Laura gave him a supportive smile. "You're going to do great things, Max." "Thank you, Laura," he replied, filled with determination. But the moment he walked out of that office, doubt crept back in. The laughter, the ridicule, it all circled back to him like ghosts from the past. Despite the support he received, he still felt unworthy. This was all happening so quickly, and he couldn't shake the feeling that it could unravel just as fast. Would the pilot project truly illustrate the power of his vision? Outside the building, he paused, taking a deep breath. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, a blend of excitement and fear. How would he face the challenges ahead? Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from his social media account. He opened it to find the women from the cafe had posted a photo, laughing, their captions filled with mocking remarks. "When you think you can pitch a business in thrift store chic." Rolling on the floor laughing, Max's heart dropped as the words cut through him. The embarrassment felt fresh, more real than it had moments before. Would this ever go away? He couldn't help but imagine those sneering faces, that laughter ringing out in his mind when he needed to be confident. And just like that, the walls of doubt began to close in again. He was standing at a crossroads. Would he let their words shape his journey, or would he rise above them? As he took another breath, a flicker of anger ignited within him, fanning the flames of determination he had held in his heart. He wouldn't let anyone define who he was or how far he could go. Suddenly, he felt more alive than ever. But just as that feeling began to gain traction, his phone buzzed again, startling him. This time it was a text from Laura. "We need to meet again." Max stared at the message, conflicted. What if they pulled back? What if he wasn't ready? Doubts flooded back. He typed a quick, nervous response. "Of course, I'm ready whenever you are." But as he hit send, he felt the breath catch in his throat. Standing at that moment, the dizzying realization crashed over him. He was at a turning point in his life. Could this be the launchpad for his dreams? And what if he faltered? Reflected in the glass of the building towering above him, he could see the man he wanted to become. But every moment of self-doubt clung like shadows, threatening to pull him back. The city pulsed around him, filled with potential, with stories waiting to be told. And Max stood alone, consumed by unanswered questions. Would he confront the fear? Would he embrace his vision? Or would he let it slip through his fingers? Max found himself standing on the brink of his future, and with a deep breath, he took the first step forward. But just as he turned, ready to chase destiny, he felt a small tremor beneath his feet, a sign, a warning. Before he could react, everything froze, the world around him shimmering like a mirage. The laughter, the doubt, the anticipation, all converged into one question that buzzed in the air. What would he choose to become? And at that moment, uncertainty hung heavy as the door to his dreams lay wide open. Would he walk through it, or would he turn back? The answer loomed just out of reach.